Watkins Glen, a quaint village nestled among innumerable falls along the Finger Lakes region in the heart of New York wine country. The town was made famous for the road races held along the village's main street in the late 40s and 50s, which eventually made their way to the 3.4-mile circuit that is Watkins Glen. The Glen has played host to many racing series, including Formula One and the United States Grand Prix. But this weekend, the Ferrari Challenge North America has descended upon this iconic track for the fourth round of the 2024 championship season. Who will master this old-school circuit and emerge victorious from the weekend? Only time will tell. Who will be victorious? It is round 4 of our 2024 calendar here at Watkins Glen for our Pirelli and Pirelli Am drivers in the Ferrari Challenge. Hello, welcome, good afternoon. There you can see the drivers lining up in the pit lane, ready for the get-go then for a 30-minute race of our Ferrari Challenge cars. Then the Pirelli drivers with a red strip across the top of the windscreen. Pirelli Am drivers with the white strip across the top of the windscreen. And here, right now, is Amanda Busick.
Dave, you've been gracious of your praise of Watkins Glen, talking about how beautifully manicured it is around this place. Well, having a Ferrari Daytona as lawn art isn't a bad way to do it as well. But when we talk the race ahead in Trofeo, Pirelli, you'll go back to qualifying today. It was cut short for an off with a red flag that we were given. You will see the order in qualifying a little different. Jason McCarthy down there starting in that P5, P6 position, I believe. But both guys that finished third in the race yesterday will start on the pole today. You have the points leader in Trofeo Pirelli and Dylan Medler, and then in that Pirelli Am as well, they will start on that pole position. But race number 2 here in Watkins Glen, we are into the back half of this season, so drivers do have championship on their mind, and it'll start right now.
Amanda, you speak so much sense. You're absolutely right. Championship is uppermost in drivers' minds. Of course it is. So Dylan Medler going from pole position for Pirelli. Tony Davis for Pirelli Am pole position. As I mentioned, a fourth event then of our 2024 calendar, halfway point. From here we go to Sonoma, then it's Indianapolis, and then it's Imola in Italy for Finale Mondiale. Everyone had spoken to me about how good the Watkins Glen is, and when I arrived here at the Glen, I realized just how beautiful it is. And it's a very, very demanding circuit, that's for sure. Some 11 turns, and overtaking opportunities are at a premium on this track, and it's more undulating than our track animation would lead you to believe necessarily. But every driver loves being here, even if it is something of a challenge, forgive the pun, in terms of overtaking. Where the conditions are just about perfect for racing. 41 degrees, 32 degrees, the air temperature. Humidity of 41%. The wind has dropped a bit now, down to 9 kilometers per hour. That's the way it looks. That's the way it's going to be for the next 30 minutes or so of racing. And here is the grid in full. Dylan Medler, pole position. Alongside him, Matthias Perez-Companc. Danger man, potentially. Roberto Perina and Dave Musial Jr. go from row 2. It's P3 and P4 for those drivers. For Joe Rubo and Jason McCarthy, it's P5 and P6. And the best of the Am drivers then, Tony Davis. He's got Brian Cook for company. It's going to be an interesting row. But then it's John Horsch, who's looked good all weekend, and Brad Fowler alongside P9 and P10. But David Musial and Omar Balkasoon, they are on the 6th row of the grid. And as we head to the 7th, it's P13 for Michael Mathis and P14 for Sebastian Mascaro. Frank Szczesniak and Jay Logan go from P15 and 16. And then it's Michael Petramalo, definitely out of position after an off, and Frank Chang going from the row 9. That's the way it looks. Tony Verlander, the ingredients are there for another very, very good Ferrari Challenge race.
Yes, eyes on the front row. So Dylan Medler, amazing performance in qualifying. Only driver to go under 1:45 lap times. Matthias Perez Compact has been a bit shy at the start. So what can he do from P2? Third, so inside line going into turn 1. Roberto Perina has been very aggressive at the starts of the race. Man, making the moves and really looking for those overtaking opportunities. He had a lot of pace yesterday, so after the start, let's see Dylan's setup, what he has chosen for this race. Does he has the pace for 30 minutes? Roberto Perina proved yesterday that he had a very strong speed. What can Jason McCarthy do from P6? And yes, he did yesterday the pole position, and today struggled in qualifying. So interesting to follow these drivers.
Yes, some drivers out of position, no question about that. And when you consider the likes of Sebastian Mascaro as an example, going from P8 within Trofeo Pirelli Am, and we saw his car there, and should say hello to his daughter Mila. I promised I would. And Sebastian, in his first season of racing, which is great about the Ferrari Challenge, we have experienced drivers, young drivers, drivers new to the challenge. The mix of driving or drivers is absolutely brilliant. Look at these cars champing at the bit to get going here. So Dylan Medler, Matthias Compact, they will control the pace of the rolling start. Then we bring it to you from two completely different angles. Safety car has peeled off into the pit lane, and Dylan Medler and Matthias Compact then leading the cars away. And you can see Roberto Perina and Dave Musial Jr. also champing at the bit to get going here as Dylan Medler. Well, was Matthias Compact sleeping there because Dylan Medler got away, or did he get away? Did he anticipate the green flag?
Looked like he went on throttle really early, so he opened a huge gap. So Perina is now keeping his third place. Looks like a quite clean start through turn 1. Yeah, Dylan Medler opened the throttle really early, and yeah, was able to pull a big gap already on the main straight.
Well, the question is whether he went just a little bit too early, as Tony Davis is trying to escape up the road from Brian Cook. And as you can see here, Jason McCarthy trying to come back at Tony Davis right now, going into the bus stop, and he needed to do that to keep on terms with the other Trofeo Pirelli drivers. So Tony Davis obviously with a blistering start, and had put himself ahead of one of our Trofeo Pirelli drivers, Tony Davis, a Pirelli Am driver. So as the cars scream uphill right now, you can see that Brian Cook is now beginning to mount the pressure on Tony Davis. Brian Cook, of course, has had a rich vein of success in the Ferrari Challenge in Trofeo Pirelli Am, and he wants to continue that success trajectory, that's for sure. Dylan Medler escaping up the road from Matthias Compact. He's got Roberto Perina for company, and Dave Musial Jr. not far behind. Then it is Joe Rubo and Jason McCarthy. All the cars come screaming by. And there you can see Tony Davis ahead of Brian Cook, and then it is well, John Horsch losing out at the start of the race, having dropped a couple of places. So there, the man that was responsible for one of the most stunning fireworks shows that we saw here at Watkins Glen last night, Tony Davis, is running P1 for Continental Autosports in the Ferrari Challenge. Trofeo Pirelli Am. Across the guardrail they go, and we saw in a race previous to this one just how close they get to that guardrail, and for one particular driver he got too close and actually clattered into it. So you have to be millimetrically perfect, Tony, and have real confidence in where you can place that car on the exit of that turn.
Yeah, it is true, because you want to carry a lot of speed, and it's just a fine balance with not touching the outside wall and that just going really close to it. Important is the exit, because then you carry a lot of speed on the main straight, and it helps to improve the lap time. It's a difficult task also with a lot of fuel and the opening laps of the race, where you still need to sort of settle down with the right handling of the car, and you're taking everything the car is offering to you, and sometimes even a bit more.
Dave Musial Jr. and Joe Rubo breaking away a bit from Jason McCarthy, who's having a torrid time of it. There's Jason McCarthy. You just see him into the shot there, and Tony Davis and Brian Cook almost staying with him. And of course, Tony Davis did get by Jason McCarthy right at the start of the race. So with Tony Davis leading this and Brian Cook running in P2, what will be going through Brian Cook's mind? Keep it clean and just think of banking points rather than going too hard and aggressive in terms of trying to overtake?
I think he's just trying to put pressure on Tony Davis and see if he makes a mistake. So Tony made a little mistake yesterday in the bus stop, so he almost lost the control of his car. He's been more determined today. Great performance in qualifying and still keeping the lead of the race. But Brian in second place is doing exactly the job he needs to do. So pressure, and if Tony makes a mistake, be there to take an advantage of it. So I think it's forming a good battle between these two for the lead of the race.
And that's the thing, Tony, and a critical thing that you said there is, you've got to stay within closeness. So if something does happen, if Tony does make a mistake, you've got to be able to take advantage of that. You're probably not going to be gifted that opportunity 2 times.
Yeah, that is true. So just stay there like Brian is showing now, that he has similar pace than the leader, Tony Davis.
I'm just looking and seeing the red bars on Dylan Medler on the graphics on the left-hand side of your screen. That would indicate to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Dylan Medler is going to pick up a time penalty. I am convinced of that, and I hope someone can confirm that, because unfortunately we don't get the race control messages on our timing screen, which is really irritating. Yes, 15-second time penalty for Dylan Medler. He did anticipate the start. Tony, I thought that, didn't I?
Yeah, that's a bad news for Dylan, because it's very difficult to pull a big gap here, and he was just too quick, maybe a bit too nervous, being afraid of the other drivers and just opening the throttle too early, and he's down to when the lights go off or either the green flag. I think it's a green flag in this occasion. So before that you cannot accelerate. You need to maintain a consistent speed, and it's a tough call because you are the race leader and you start from pole, so you should be able to be in command of this procedure, but there are also rules for this that you cannot accelerate before.
Well, that really changes the shape of this race very early on, because basically what you're saying is Dylan Medler would need to create a gap of over 15 seconds ahead of Matthias Kompang for him to retain that P1 position. That's beyond a tall order, I would suggest.
And also 15 seconds is in 30-minute race, it's quite a lot. If you see Formula 1, they throw in 5 seconds for similar stuff or more severe stuff. So 15 seconds is quite hard.
So that effectively means, although Dylan Medler is the leader of the race on track, when the time penalty is applied at the end of the race, it will be, as it stands, Matthias Kompang that will be leading the race ahead of Roberto Perina and Dave Musial Jr. So do bear that in mind. The graphics on the left-hand side of your screen, indicative of the 3 bars. Each of the bars represents a 5-second time penalty. Jolly glad I noticed that, I have to be honest. Yeah, that means Kompang, Perina, Musial Jr. as it is at the moment. Brian Cook has set the fastest lap in Trofeo Pirelli Am, and he continues to chase down Tony Davis. And there you can see Jason McCarthy, who's running P6 at the moment on track, but of course that would be P5 when the time penalty is applied to our race leader. And Jason just hasn't looked on it today in this car, Tony.
Yeah, roller coaster weekend for him. So pole position and win yesterday, and really struggling today the whole time. Again, he overshot the corner in turn 7 on this lap, and he's struggling with the pace. So only after 3 laps he's several seconds behind. So yeah, not a strong day today for Jason.
The Continental Autosports driver Tony Davis then leads in Trofeo Pirelli Am with Brian Cook running P2, and then not so far behind as Brad Falver, Omar Balkasoon and John Horsch losing out at the start of the race. So for the moment, Tony Davis is completely exemplary in where he's placing his car on the track and not providing any opportunity. Although, saying that, I don't think Brian Cook is quite close enough to be able to take advantage of any opportunity in any event. So great pace from our top 2 drivers in Trofeo Pirelli Am. Still a very long way to go in this race, 22.5 minutes. And if you know anything about the Ferrari Challenge, you'll know that you're best expecting the unexpected, because all sorts of things can happen between now and the checkered flag rolling. So it's Medler, Kompang, Perina in Trofeo Pirelli.
Yeah, and a good response from Tony Davis, leader of Pirelli Am. He just set the fastest lap time, so he's able to match or even be a few tenths quicker than Brian Cook. So he's really giving it everything and trying to win this one.
So just ahead of John Horsch is the Omar Balkasoon car for Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale, currently running P4 within class. Remind you, the two classes in this Ferrari Challenge race, the Trofeo Pirelli drivers and the Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers. And Tony Davis and Brian Cook broken away a little bit from Brad Falver, who's running P3, but then it is Omar Balkasoon and John Horsch, Dave Musial, Sebastian Mascaro and Michael Mathis all closer-ish together. Well, little individual battles going on between some of those places as Brian Cook now turns up the wick a little bit and gets a little bit closer to Tony Davis. Ferrari of Lake Forest, David Musial, then running P6 at the moment. Of course, he was on the podium yesterday, and at the moment he's at least 3 places away from that privilege being earned again today. For my money, John Horsch here, trying to right the wrongs of the start, and is really tracking Omar Balkasoon as Tony Davis is breaking away a bit from Brian Cook and from Brad Falver right now. So there is John Horsch. We follow him as he heads into turn number 1, and for my money, he is getting a little bit closer to Omar Balkasoon on every single lap at the moment. Dylan Medler, of course, leading the race on track, but I remind you that the 3 red bars against the graphic at the top of the left-hand side of your screen, indicative that Dylan Medler has picked up a 15-second time penalty for being a bit lively at the start of the race. That, therefore, if everything stood the way it is at the moment, would elevate Matthias Compact to the lead of the race and the win, and Roberto Perina and Dave Musial Jr. would be P2 and P3. However, as I said, a lot to be done between now and then. There is Dylan Medler, there is Compact, and of course, in situations like this, Tony, for the likes of Matthias Compact, would the team have told him that? Because there's no point in him trying to chase down Dylan Medler. It'd be absolutely futile.
Yeah, for sure he has the information, and the good thing for Matthias is Dylan keeps going strong. He has a strong pace, so also Matthias has a clear track in front of him, so that allows him to use and do his speed, his lap times, and Roberto Perina is not really able to battle that much with Matthias. But when you are a racing driver, Dylan Medler, leader of the race, you always feel sort of like a victim. You got the penalty, so should he back off the pace a little bit, form sort of a group behind him, or should he just try to push away and pull away as hard as he can? So these things go to your mind, but I think in this occasion the only chance for Dylan is just to keep the pace as quick as you can and then see where you end up at the checkered flag.
In your experience of racing, Tony Verlander, of which you have done so much and been so successful, I'm assuming that the collection team will have probably tried to appeal that decision. Have you ever known a decision as dramatic as that to be taken away?
It's always each time is an individual moment. You know, you can sometimes win the appeal. Sometimes they won't even review it, or so it's always a matter of the elements that the stewards have and the way they see he accelerated. But he almost, on the onboard we are having now, almost overshot the engine to the bus stop. But it's the stewards, they have more elements to see the speed, to see the acceleration. After the race, I've been few times as a steward or driver advisor in Europe with Ferrari Challenge, so team can provide the onboard images, they can provide the telemetry, they can have the tools to show that, look, this wasn't a false start, but then at the same time stewards have more elements to show that, hey, the race hadn't started yet and the leading car accelerated too early, and then there's no case.
It's a slam dunk, isn't it? Yeah. I have to say, in my experience, I think you're absolutely right. The likelihood of that being rescinded is pretty remote. Okay, so 17.5 minutes of the race remaining. Dylan Medler on track ahead of Matthias Compact and Roberto Perina. Now, of course, Roberto Perina will have been informed about the decision as well, because it's given him the hurry up to think that, you know, I'm net P2 in the race. I could be net P1 if I can get past Matthias Compact ahead. And you can see, look, on the last lap, he was 2.5 tenths quicker.
Yeah, the pace we've seen from Roberto Perina over the season is he's a championship contender. I think where he needs to improve a bit is try to get those pole positions, because in the race he's very, very strong.
And this then is some more fights going on here. Further down the order with Frank Szczesniak and Sebastian Mascaro and Jay Logan in the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers. And, well, Roberto Perina just taking a look at the inside of Matthias Kompang then. So I think this is on for what would be the net lead of the race effectively. So Roberto Perina then really taking it to Matthias Kompang. Those two have broken away from Dave Musial Jr., who's not been able to match the pace of these two. So Dylan Medler has escaped up the road, but it's almost academic that we mention that, although, of course, Dylan Medler is a fine driver and he'll be furious with that penalty. And he proves what pace he's got and what a great driver he is by virtue of how far he is ahead of Matthias Kompang. But Matthias Kompang is now having to defend from Roberto Perina, who is thinking, yeah, I want to be on the top step of this podium. And the only thing that's preventing me doing that is the car ahead of me. Got to find a way by, though. It is Kompang and Roberto Perina then running P2 and P3 on track, but it is net P1 and P2 once the time penalty has been applied to Dylan Medler. For our AM drivers, Tony Davis from Brian Cook and Brad Falver, they are the top three. So interesting. Perina was right on him a moment ago. There are sections of the track where Perina seems stronger, but paradoxically, there are sections of the track where Kompang seems stronger.
Yeah, on the previous lap, we didn't see also the bus stop. I think Matthias had something going on in bus stop or coming out of the bus stop into turn 5, because suddenly Perina was really close. So if you just place half car length offline, there's not the same grip as on the racing line. And then you struggle. You need to back off and you cannot carry the same speed. So I think this allowed Perina to really close up, because then having finished the lap, Matthias was back on his normal pace, and then Perina wasn't able to look for overtaking opportunity anymore.
Yes, that's a fair point. Well made. We didn't see that, and perhaps that explains quite a lot then. So the number 33 car of Omar Balkasoon trying to get on terms with Brad Falver here. Car streaming past the guardrail. There is Dylan Medler. There is Matthias Kompang and Roberto Perina. Dave Musial Jr. 2.0 now. Just beginning to get a little bit closer. Let's go down into the hot seat with Amanda Busick right now.
Yeah, you'd have to think that his team has also told him that he's in a position for a podium today, depending on what will happen with the penalty against Dylan Medler. But I talked to Dave Musial Jr. after the race yesterday. He had a P5 finish in race number 1 and told me that he was having some issues with some controls inside of the Ferrari and just really kind of frustrating race for him. But back to the conversation on the stability and security that drivers are finding in this 296. You know, he shares these weekends with his father, and I talked to Senior about some of the things that they might do in the weekend, whether they get out to restaurants or whether, you know, they explore the area. And he was like, no, Amanda, we come to the racetrack, go home, focus on this. This is why we are here, and this is why we love racing.
Absolutely dedicated and committed then to the racing, of course. And just picking up on this, the Jay Logan car is parked up at the bus stop, parked behind the tyre barriers there. Just wondering how long Jay Logan has been there, because I'd not picked up on that earlier, Tony. I have to be honest, and yeah, seems to have parked there, and is that's where the car is staying. So Jay Logan is clearly out of the race. So we continue to follow this that is going on, and it is Roberto Perina trying to chase down Matthias Kompang for the lead of this Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli race. If you're thinking, what on earth are you talking about? Well, Dylan Medler is leading on track, but Dylan Medler has picked up a time penalty of 15 seconds. So that means that the net leader is going to be Matthias Kompang with Roberto Perina P2 and Dave Musial Jr. P3. Unless Dylan Medler can open up a gap of 15 seconds. How's he doing on that? He's got up to 2.1. I think that's, Tony, you said in a 30-minute race, it's darn near impossible.
Yeah, it's a very hard penalty. Obviously, it looks like he made a mistake, but still 15 seconds is a lot. if you have 5 seconds, you still have a penalty and it's all to play for. But right now, he needs 2 more seconds gap to Jason McCarthy, so he would finish in front of him. So it's very, very tough, very hard penalty. In Europe, it used to be a drive-through penalty or stop-and-go penalty, so that would be even more.
I was going to say that would be more costly,
yeah,
wouldn't it, Tony?
that was even more costly. So basically, your race was over. So it's a fine line for these starts. The occasions I've been on the pole position, I'm very precise on how to say
Methodology.
Yes, so I want to talk to the race director. I want him to explain to me what I can do and what he wants to see at the start. Because anyway, there is the human effect as well. Because in the end, the stewards, they have their view on things, and the person who makes the race start, he wants to see some sort of formation, and he will tell you exactly what he wants to see from the start. So if you try to match what you do inside the race car starting on pole position, what the requirements are, then the chance of getting a penalty is much lower. So I think this is a reminder also for our drivers who manage to do a pole position and are the overall leaders. It's always good to also communicate with the staff, with the persons who make the decisions for penalty or the race start, so then you know exactly what to do.
Good advice there. Brian Cook has, got a bit closer to Tony Davis now, and just for a few corners he was right with him. So Brian Cook then under braking gets closer to Tony Davis. So Tony Davis, who has been doing a good job in this P1 position in Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli Am, and Brian Cook just getting a little bit closer now. So into the final third of this Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli, their race 2 of the weekend. With we're watching.
Look at the top 8, where we discussed yesterday and today the importance of qualifying. 0 means they lost and gained nothing. So the way where they started the race is their position on track right now. So importance of the qualifying. What we mentioned about B3 driver, car number 55, Roberto Berrina, if he wants to win these races, a little step in qualifying, and I think in the races itself he has the pace to be a race winner consistently. It's just a few more spots, better qualifying sessions. It's all he needs.
Okay, Roberto Berrina then, who is currently running P3 on track, but that will turn out to be P2 come the end of the race by dint of the time penalty. So fastest lap just been set by Tony Davis in the beg your pardon, I'm sorry, you're pointing out something different, and that is that now Dylan Medler has got 15 seconds over Jason McCarthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. So that means that Dylan Medler would end up effectively P6. That's a bitter pill to take, isn't it? But I was right. Tony Davis is the fastest lap driver, and Dylan Medler, of course, who that wouldn't apply to his fastest lap. He retains that, presumably. He's still in the race, isn't he? So fastest lap would still go the way of Dylan Medler, but yeah, I think he would be P6 at the moment, but we've still got 8.5 minutes to run. So, talking of which, we watch him across the line, and Matthias Kompank has broken away just a bit now from Roberto Berrina. It's Dave Musial Jr., Joe Rubo, and Jason McCarthy. So yeah, P5 or P6 we think for Dylan Medler, which is a long way away from the P1 that he earned in qualifying and he was hoping to convert into the race. So the Ferrari Central Florida driver, Matthias Kompank, another very young driver and talented driver as well. He comes from a good Kompank stock. They are renowned for their driving ability. And, well, Tony Davis and Brian Cook and Brad Fowler are the 1, 2, 3 for the Trofeo Pirelli Am drivers. 7 3/4 minutes left.
Yeah, great story with Matthias Perez Kompank. I've seen him on the racetracks around the world when he was really, really young. And at the time, I didn't imagine him to be one day in Ferrari Challenge. So he has done some go-karts, have really created or built this passion for racing, and in Austin, the opening race in Coda, I saw him with the Ferrari Challenge. So Father Luis was all happy and proud, saying, and look at this, Tony, how things change. We're getting older and new generations joining in, and this is a good thing.
Of course. Yes, it's constant evolution, isn't it, in terms of motor racing talent, and it's wonderful to see as Brian Cook once again tries to get a bit closer to Tony Davis. I have to say, really impressed with what Tony Davis is doing out there. Appears to be managing it perfectly. What say you, Amanda?
Yeah, you'll remember Tony told us during qualifying that it really was that miscue that he had towards the end of the race and the bus stop that was really fuel for him today to get back on top and to right the wrong that he felt that he was responsible for yesterday. At one point, this gap between Tony Davis and Brian Cook had got up to about a second and a half. Brian has now taken a bit of a chunk to that. We're 14 minutes left to go in this race, but you'll go back to that interview as well, Dave. Tony told us that he loves being on offense. Let's go. He is pushing this Ferrari, but might have Brian saved enough of this Ferrari to make a late dive to him as we get closer to this finish.
Well, you make a very good point, Amanda. With just 6 minutes remaining, is it now or never for Brian Cook? Because he's going to have to do it and do it soon. I think, for my money, Tony Davis is managing this. I think the scare going into the bus stop yesterday metaphorically kicked him up the bottom, and he's not going to make the same mistake again. He's very focused, very concentrated. He knows, and I think he is managing this gap. He's got the pace. He's not overstressing the car or himself. He's just managing it perfectly. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, when you do a driver error and it costs you places in the race, and I think that was in the last lap of the race, so that really gives you the determination for the day after. So we saw already a great performance in qualifying, very decisive at the start of the race. He was actually able to overtake Jason McCarthy and was ahead of him until the entry of the bus stop, and now it's been a tight battle with these two drivers, so Tony Davis and Brian Cook. So but still Brian is applying that pressure onto Tony, and 5 minutes to go, it will be a tight battle. Seems like towards the last sector, towards the last corners of this lap, Brian is always able to close down the gap a little bit, and then coming out of turn one and the S's, Tony is pulling away a bit, so it's a bit elastic distance all the time.
And is that because, you know, when you set a car up, the team set a car up for your driving style and what best suits you, the setup is always a compromise because the three sectors of the circuit are very, very different, aren't they? And what works for one driver in one sector may not work for another driver in another.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So where you set up the car, the way the car is standing, is it more nose down? And also we see this big rear wing we have on this 296 Ferrari Challenge car. So how much speed from turn one here? If it's not flat through the S's, there's a tiny lift, and then it's a long way to the bus stop. So if, for example, Tony Davis has a little bit less rear wing and he's pulling a better top speed, so it means that that's the reason why he's faster coming from turn one all the way to the bus stop.
Fair point. And we watched Tony and Brian through the bus stop, where Brian seems to get closer to Tony Davis through that section of the track. But as I say, I think Tony appears to have this under control. His gap between them seesaws between 5, 6 and 7 tenths really with every lap. So with 3.5 minutes of this race remaining, we are running out of time for Brian Cook to be able to do anything to try and wrestle away this lead from Tony Davis. For Brian Cook, of course, who has had some 3 wins across the 4 wins made that across the season, the last one of which came in just yesterday's race. He's got to think about the points and the long haul. He's just showing his face there to the inside of Tony Davis, just to try and break his concentration a bit.
I think Tony is losing a little bit of rhythm. He's trying to cover for the racing lines and try to cover those overtaking opportunities from Brian Cook, and I think Brian has a little bit better run through these slower corners, so Tony needs to focus on the mirrors, but at the same time he needs to keep the pace on. It's 2 minutes 50 to go, and these are the important parts of the race, and you cannot just start, not saying blocking, but cover the line too much, because then you lose too much pace.
Fair point. Of course, Tony's got track position, and he of course, if Brian wants to find a way by, he has got to do exactly that. Find a way by. As Brian just lost the back end of the car there, Tony. That's how hard he's trying.
Wow, that was the exit of turn one. We've seen few mistakes during this weekend already. So when he rode that higher part of the exit curb, car went all the way sideways, left and right, and I'm very happy to see he managed to control that.
Good, he did, but that may have done for him, Tony. That may have just taken away the tenths that he needed to try and get closer to Tony Davis. We will see. We've got just under 2 minutes remaining of this Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli and Trofeo Pirelli Am race, a race that has been led from the off by Dylan Medler, and then came the news of a 15-second time penalty, which means that the race win would be inherited if it stopped right now by Matthias Kompak ahead of Roberto Perina and Dave Musial Jr. For the Trofeo Pirelli Am drivers, it's been Tony Davis, Brian Cook and Brad Falver. The talk has been all about those drivers, and here they come climbing up the hill right now. So Brian Cook with a scary moment just a few moments ago. And Tony Davis, Tony Villander alongside me, making the point that probably just a lap or so ago, Tony was really rather too focused on defending any overtaking opportunities for Brian Cook and losing his own concentration and focus in propelling the car forward. But for now, the threat from Brian Cook has gone away just a little bit. We are on the final lap of this Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli race, and I think Brian is too far behind to even mount a challenge on Tony right now.
Yeah, the gap is bigger now than it was previous lap. So the mistake at turn one, lap before, cost some time to Brian Cook, and maybe he lost some confidence as well. And he needs to keep in mind that championship as well.
Yes,
it's very bad to score a zero, to score a DNF instead of second place. So you need to be clever in this aspect as well. I feel sorry for Dylan.
This is Dylan Medler, and the reason Tony feels sorry for Dylan is because he's seemingly been given a very harsh 15-second time penalty for jumping the start, Tony. You know, for being too quick on the accelerator pedal before the green flag had came out. Race Direction were very quick to make that ruling. So, and they, as you said, they have lots of data and lots of camera angles available to them. They can even see the telemetry in the car as to when Dylan actually accelerated. And if it was before when the green flag came out, then it is a slam dunk penalty. Yeah. 15 seconds. Yeah, it's a tall order and it's tough. But those are the rules. So, effectively, Matthias Kompak is leading the race.
Yeah, Dylan Medler, so great turnaround from yesterday. They managed to find a lot of speed on one lap, but also the race distance. But the rules are rules, and the winner today is Matthias Perez Kompak. His second win of the season. He's promoted to Pirelli class during the season, and he's showing the true pace and skills. He's a young driver, and he's still learning a lot and improving every weekend.
Matthias Kompak then is the winner, and Trofeo Pirelli. In Trofeo Pirelli Am then, it's been an assured drive from Tony Davis, who's had a threat from Brian Cook throughout the race, but the threat towards the end of the race went away, and Tony Davis is victorious at Watkins Glen and takes the checkered flag ahead of Brian Cook and Brad Falver. That's the way it looks for the top three in each of the categories then. Can't help but feel sorry for Dylan Medler, who ends up finishing P5 in the race, and I'm sure there will be some robust conversations about that penalty, but thankfully those are for people other than us to discuss. But nonetheless, he'll take it on board and he will pick himself up, and we're on board with Michael Mathis right now, who's going to finish P7 in Trofeo Pirelli Am, rounding the final turn, climbing uphill. Sorry, not at the final turn yet. We're with Michael Mathis after the checkered flag. Forgive me, I thought for a moment this was a replay, and most certainly isn't. So there is Matthias Kompak, the winner of this race. Taking P2 then, Roberto Perina. And P3 for Dave Musial Jr. So a good podium for Dave. Joe Rubo finishes P4. P5 then for Dylan Medler, bitterly disappointing. And for Jason McCarthy as well, a disappointing day given what he did yesterday. He'll be less than happy with that, I feel sure. For our Trofeo Pirelli Am drivers then, as I mentioned, Tony Davis, we've seen take the checkered flag ahead of Brian Cook, who takes a P2 and P3 for Brad Falver in the number 66 car, Tony. Well, how can a driver like Jason McCarthy go from one day yesterday to a day like today?
This is a mystery. How can you lose the pace so much? He did 1:45.0 in qualifying yesterday. Today the qualifying was cut a bit short, but he was 9/10 slower. And today he lost over 15 seconds to the winning, or let's say, driver who went through the checkered flag first, Dylan Medler. So for sure something related to the setup, because I would like to think the driver drives the same way. He won yesterday, and suddenly he really struggled to keep up with the leaders and finished only P6.
There in graphics you can see the top three in each of our categories. Trofeo Pirelli, Matthias Kompang, Roberto Perina, David Musial Jr., the top three. Trofeo Pirelli Am, it's Tony Davis, Brian Cook and Brad Falver. As Matthias Kompang then brings his car into the Parfum area, then Roberto Perina is already parked up outside his pit perch there, and the car's then being ushered into the paddock. And there you can almost feel the disappointment on the number 15 car as it turns in. You know, can understand that. And there, though, nonetheless, is the number 50 car. And here come the results in full for you. Matthias Perez Compact taking the win from Roberto Perina and David Musial Jr. Joe Rubo, Dylan Medler and Jason McCarthy, P4, 5 and 6. Best of the AM drivers, Tony Davis taking P7 overall, but P1 ahead of, then it was for P2, Brian Cook. And then Brad Falver, Omar Balkasoon, John Horsch, David Musial, Michael Mathis, Frank Szczesniak, Sebastian Mascaro. And then it was Jay Logan, who was parked up, and Frank Chang didn't complete the race, and nor the Michael Petromalo, Christopher Cagnazzi and John Bennett. Neither of those two drivers were starting, but congratulations to Matthias Perez Compact. So Trofeo Pirelli cars making their way, and the Trofeo Pirelli Am cars making their way back to the paddock area. So yes, another dramatic race in the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli for those drivers. Next stop will be the Sonoma Raceway in California in July. It's in August, actually. Me, I've got the date wrong on my calendar, Tony.
No worries.
What's
The
worse
important thing is the drivers know the right date.
No, I'm just remembering.
It doesn't matter if we show up 1 week later or too early, but
I've booked the flights.
all right, there you go.
No, only joking. So yes, it's the Sonoma Raceway, a very different raceway to this one, that's for sure. As the cars make their way down towards the Podium area and Parfum area now, which is a very lively place just outside the hospitality here in Watkins Glen. Very loud with DJ there on the decks. Tony and I offered to support last night with our Nana Muscuri album, but we were turned away.
Fabio Tosi, so of course team manager here in US, helping Matthias outside the car, unplugging the radio, and happy moment. Louis Colmage.
Head of Motorsports for Ferrari North America. And the Trofeo Pirelli Am cars pulling in behind as well.
Yeah, it was a really good move to promote Matthias to Pirelli class. So this way he can fight in the lead of the race, fight for the overall win. So great move.
Let's take a look at the Drivers' Championship then. Trofeo Pirelli first of all, and the way it looks in terms of the points haul. Dylan Medler still leading, but look at this now. Roberto Perina on 243 points as well. Matthias Kompank is only 5 points behind, if my calculations are correct, with Dave Musial Jr., then Jason McCarthy, John Bennett, Martin Burrows missing this weekend, then Joe Rubo. The Pirelli Drivers' Championship, it's tight at the top and going to be very interesting going to Sonoma.
Yes, this looks amazing to have all these drivers, first four drivers within 14 points. Amazing.
Then it's Michael Petromalo, Jeremy Clark, Christian Podoliccio and Brett Curtis, the top 12 drivers in the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli. Bringing the Trofeo Pirelli Am points, Brian Cook is still leading, but only 10 points ahead of Tony Davis. So that's going to get very exciting now. They're ahead of David Musial, Frank Chang, John Horsch, Sebastian Mascaro, Michael Mathis, and Omar Balkasoon. They are the top 8. Ahead of Benoit Bergeron, Jay Logan, Brad Falva, Brandon Cruz, Chris Cagnazzi, Brian Kaminsky, and Frank Szczesniak, of course, in the 296s. He was racing the start of the season in the 488 Challenge, and Ben Gudenzi runs P16 in the Drivers' Championship points for Trofeo Pirelli. And Matthias Perez Compact then a victory, and he is with Amanda Busick.
Yeah, Dave, you will record that win today. And Matthias, when I'm sure your team decided to tell you about the Dylan Medler penalty, how did your strategy or the race change for you at that point?
No, when I found out he had a penalty, just manage the tires and not do anything crazy and just maintain the distance, be consistent on the time. So that was the key to winning, being consistent.
I saw Roberto Perina come by and congratulate you on the win. The points championship just got so much more tight in Trofeo Pirelli. Why is this championship going to come down to Imola?
Well, we'll see when we arrive there, but I'm looking forward to winning it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There's confidence for you. I'm looking forward to winning it. Set out your stall the way you want it to happen as we look at a super slow-mo then of the race winner and him sliding the car into that turn, Tony.
Yeah, it is true. At the entry, the car was a little bit loose. So great car control.
Love it.
And for Matthias, all these tracks are brand new. And like we said during the race, that he's still learning a lot. And it's good to work with him because he has a very nice approach to his racing. And the confidence is building up. You hear he's saying that the aim is now to win the championship, so it will be exciting to see. We are more or less halfway of the season and a lot of racing still to come.
Tony Davis did a fantastic job in Trofeo Pirelli Am. He's with Amanda.
Boy, are we spoiled with the back and forth between Tony Davis and Brian Cook this season. Another championship battle that is for sure to come down to Imola. And Tony, you told us today that you used yesterday's miscue as fire to get back in that seat and perform today. You also said that you wanted to drive on offense. How did that play out for you today?
Honestly, that's the things I was thinking. I had a lot to prove after yesterday. I was very disappointed in myself after yesterday. And so I was out there to prove it today, and I didn't want to look in my mirrors. I just wanted to drive as fast as I possibly could. So Brian's a great driver. I knew I had to drive really great or he'd be on me, and I just wanted to get away. So
let me be one of the hundreds that have thanked you for the fireworks this weekend, but a memorable weekend here in Watkins Glen.
Oh, thanks. It's a joy. I'm glad Ferrari gives me an audience for the fireworks.
Well done, Tony Davis, and well done, Amanda Busick. That's it. Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am done and dusted. Still to come, though, we do have a 488 Challenge race. Join us for that if you can. But from Tony and I and Amanda, bye-bye for now.